There we go. Okay, as I was saying, thank you. Thank you for letting me know. I'm still getting used to this new video streaming platform thing. So thank you for letting me know that there was no sound. It's a good news, bad news kind of day. And the good news part is actually like genuine good news, I think, and not just like we'll cross our fingers and see. I think some of these numbers are actually going in the right direction for a few days. So there's still a grain of salt there, but some of these numbers are actually pretty good. So let's talk about it. Let's get into it. Fewer tests today, although the numbers of tests is still pretty good. Where are we at? 19,200 tests today, which is, not bad. And 34.5% of those were positive, that's not good either. That's very high. But that's a total of 6,635 cases, which is a lot. It's fewer than the last few days. Let me see here. I think at least the last 2 days, maybe the last 3. The last 2 days we've been over 7,000. Yesterday we set a record with nearly 8,000. Right? But today's 6,635. That's a lot. That's not as many as yesterday. And the percentage of positives was down. It was almost 40% yesterday for the day. Right? So today at 34.5, still pretty high, slightly better. The good news, though, in those numbers is that the 7-day positive test rate, which is kind of the number we're hanging our hat on right now, like the percentage of people who've been tested in the past 7 days who tested positive is now 33.1, which is really, really bad. It's very, very high. The number of the percentage of total tests is 16%. That takes into account that many people are being tested multiple times a week. So of those, 33% that tested positive, a lot of those got several tests. So if you count up all the tests, 16% of them are positive, which is also very high. I mean, New York City is approaching 3 and closing all the schools. So 16 for the tests and 33.1 for the people is very high, very bad, like worst in the country right now. But that's the third straight day that those numbers are lower than the day before. Trying to find little glimmers of hope here. We hit a high. No, I'm sorry. This is the fourth straight day. Back on the 15th, which would have been Sunday, our positive test rate was 36.5. And then it was 36.4, then 35.4, 34.7, 33.1. So not only did it go down, it went down like a percentage point and a half. So that's good. I like to see that. I'm not sure why that's happening. You kind of have two theories. One theory is that fewer healthy people are getting tested. We're going through a period where a lot of people who don't particularly have symptoms, who just kind of fear that they might have been exposed, are getting tested, and that will increase the number of negative tests because those people that don't have symptoms maybe were exposed, but maybe weren't, just not as likely to test positive. So those kind of tests, those kind of people being tested, will increase the number of negative tests, and decrease the positive test rate. So if we're getting more of that, that would drive that rate down a little bit. The other option is that as things have gotten really bad since September, keeping in mind that today's infection rates reflect behavior from a week to 10 days ago, right? It takes that long. Like if we had a complete state lockdown right now, all of our numbers would look the same for at least a week. It just takes that long for testing and for reporting and for it's a very slow thing to change. So it is possible, and this is my hope, this is what I got my fingers crossed for, that as the holidays are approaching and as the numbers have gotten worse and worse and worse, and we've been, and the media have been screaming from the mountaintops, and public health officials have been vociferously begging, it's possible that people are actually changing behavior, that enough people are actually changing their behavior to affect the numbers. I hope that's the case. Because if it's just, even if it's just that, like, everybody was, even people who weren't required to do so were very cautious back in March and April. Remember, we all went to Costco, stocked up on toilet paper, and then stayed home. And more or less everything shut down for a couple of months. And I think there seems to be a sentiment right now that folks are, those of us who are really believe in this, and aren't anti-maskers or whatever, are just pulling back a little bit. I mean, we have, like I have. Even, during the summer and into September, it was very easy just to go to the grocery store for a couple of things, and we're not doing that as much anymore. We're going back to ordering from Costco rather than going to Costco, just really being strategic about leaving the house. And I hope, I don't know this for sure, but I hope that people are just going back to that enough people across the state are just scaling back their movement a little bit. Just scaling back their interactions with other people enough that that the curve is starting to bend ever so slightly. I hope that's the case. If not, all it is this reflection of changes in testing and different populations being tested now that are more likely to be negative, right? So that is hopeful, and we will cross our fingers and see. The other number related to that is that the average number of cases per day is down to 6,218, which is still really high. But that was as high as almost 6,700 a couple of days ago. Again, that reflects a couple of days over the weekend of lower testing. But still, to that number going down, I like to see that. Now, the bad news. The new number of tests in a particular day is not directly related to the number of deaths in that day. The number of deaths reported today reflect cases that were diagnosed or confirmed 3 to 4 weeks ago. And even if today's numbers continue to go down, we're not going to see a decrease in deaths for 3 weeks into the future. Okay. So today we report 83 new deaths, which is the second highest we've ever reported. The most being only 2 days ago at 92. So the last 3 days we had 92, 55, and 82. That's 227 deaths in the past 3 days. Once again, those aren't 227 people who died in the past 3 days. Those are deaths that occurred over the past week or so, week to 10 days, and are just now being reported in the data. So the people who are dying today, we won't see in the data for another week probably. And the lower cases today, lower cases the last 2 days, and if the cases continue to go down, we won't see that a corresponding decrease in deaths for another almost month. Okay, so don't be discouraged by the deaths. I mean, be discouraged by the deaths. They're horrible. We hate them. That's awful. that 83 more people died. And by the way, the deaths, I mean, they're kind of spread out by age. Most are over 70, but there's one person in their 30s who passed away. 7 people in their 50s. 8 people in their 60s. Like, these are not just old people. Most, however, were. 21 people in their 70s, 28 in their 80s, and 18 in their 90s. So it's still, the most vulnerable people are over 70. But they're certainly not the only vulnerable people. And then in terms of where these deaths occurred, most, as usual, in Milwaukee County, 12, and 9 in Kenosha County, 6 in Dodge County, 5 each in Racine and Lincoln counties. Those are very different counties. Lincoln is quite a bit more rural than Racine. 3 in Waupaca, Washington, Trempealeau, Outagamie, Marathon, and Fond du Lac. Marathon had 7 yesterday. Marathon has had at least a couple of deaths almost every day for the past week or so, which is, I hate it. And school's still in person up there. Wood County, Waukesha County, Sauk County, Rock County, Portage, Langlade, Eau Claire, and Brown all had 2 deaths each. And the following counties each had 1. Walworth, Sawyer, Richland, Ozaukee, Oneida, Marinette, La Crosse, Grant, Dane, Clark, Chippewa, and Calumet. That's where they are today. That's where those are reported today. But again, we will very likely see deaths continue to go up, even if the number of cases continues to go down, because those 2 indicators are just lagged by about 4 weeks. So they're not on the same track necessarily. Okay. So, I would say be encouraged by the lower cases, but be ready for higher death numbers. I think Derek has a point here. There's no way Thanksgiving won't feel more spread in this state. I think a lot of people are trying really hard to justify having Thanksgiving together, and I get that impulse. It's a family thing. We don't want to wait another year to do that family thing. But it's just you can't do it. it's going to cause more spread. It's going to, if you're getting together for Thanksgiving, no matter how you justify it, no matter how many well, we only go out, and they're quarantined, and you don't, it's a bubble or whatever. Like, anytime people are with other people, there's a chance of virus transmission. And let me tell you this. I was just thinking about this today. It's not a yes or no thing. It's not a binary thing, right? It's not a risk, no risk. It's about the level of risk. And the CDC says close contact means being within 6 feet of somebody indoors for 15 minutes. Okay. And if you have close contact with somebody who's carrying, you have a very high level of risk if you're in close contact. And if you are in close contact, if you find that you have been in close contact with somebody who's tested positive, you have to quarantine. Not legally, but that's what they're saying. Because that's the highest risk if you've had that close contact, that 15 minutes within 6 feet indoors. Now, that doesn't mean there is zero risk if you've been within 6 feet of somebody for 14 minutes or 10 minutes or 5 minutes, or if you've been 6.5 feet from somebody, or if you've been outdoors. It doesn't mean zero risk. It means somewhat less risk. and 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 2 feet, 3 feet, 5 feet, those all increase the risk, right? So anytime you are within any level of proximity to another human being, there is some risk. Therefore, when you get people together in a house with their masks off, there's going to be a higher level of risk. No matter what has led up to that point, no matter what happens in that house, there's just going to be some level of risk. And the more people who are taking small level of risk, is going to be more spread. There is no zero risk. That's absolutely right. Phoebe asks, and I'm sorry I forgot to mention this. Curious wonder what's rolling 7-day average for daily deaths. Seems like helpful data. Absolutely it is. And I usually say it, and I'm sorry that I didn't today. That number is another piece of the bad news. It is 51.6 today. That's the first time it's been over 50. Yesterday it was only like 47. Like, that's a big jump. So that's not good. That's not great. And that includes 2 days of only 12. Now, I will say previously, we just get fewer deaths reported like on Sundays and Mondays because there's not as many like medical examiner staff working on weekends, which is fine. Again, it takes a while for that data to get into the data, for the death to be certified and confirmed and into the data. So we expect to see lower numbers of death reported Sunday and Monday. 2 weekends ago, we were looking at like 5. A low day was 5. This past week, a low day was 12. So even like the lowest of the low days is significantly higher than the lowest of the low days was even a week or 2 ago. And then at the high end, our high end used to be 50. Then it was 66. Now it's in the 80s, right? The highest ever so far is 92. I fully anticipate another day of over 90 this week. I wouldn't be surprised if we get a day over 100 this week, to be honest with you. And again, I predicted 3 weeks ago that by Thanksgiving, the daily deaths would be 57-ish. And we're now at 51. So I hope to be wrong about that. That's one of the few things ever that I've hoped to be wrong about. And I also anticipate the daily death average to be in the 80s by mid-December. Again, there's nothing we can do about that right now because it's only a month away. However, if we continue to keep this case numbers going down, by the time we get to January, that death average will start to come down. Right? That's what we want to see. We can still salvage January, February, March until the vaccine is ready and widely available. Okay. All right. That's what I have on the coronavirus front today. A couple of other interesting news items for you. The recounts in Madison and Milwaukee, or Dane County and Milwaukee County, are getting underway tomorrow. So we will keep you apprised of that. I don't expect any real news to come out of that. But a couple of other news stories that we've put up on the website today that you should, that I would suggest that you take note of. Nasra Wahili, who's a good friend of Madison 365, a longtime nonprofit executive in Madison, has been appointed to the Common Council in Madison, to the District 7 seat. That was Donna Moreland resigned from that seat to become deputy secretary at the State Department of Safety and Professional Services, which is, it was like one day when Donna Moreland suddenly resigned, and everybody's like, why would you do that? And then you realize she's been appointed deputy secretary of a cabinet position. So that's great for Donna, but then that left an opening, which then is appointed. There's not a special election, there's an appointment, and then she'll run for a full term if she wants to. But Nasra Wahili has been appointed to that seat, and our editor Dave Dahmer spoke with her about that, which she hopes to bring to that position. So that's on the website. That's on the front page of the website right now. And also, excuse me, another Madison story. Justified working craft beer company in cooperation with Justified Anger, Alex G's organization, has created what they're calling a Justified IPA, and and the can, as far as anybody knows, it's the first time that a commercially available beer can has featured a black woman, and it's the artwork of Lalata G, Alex G's sister. So it's a really cool story. Lalata has been a nonprofit leader in this town. She's run Lalata's Living Room. She deals mostly with like domestic violence and abuse and those kinds of issues, and providing support for women and girls in those situations. And she's sort of just in the past year and a half or so has sort of come out as an artist, and it's really fun to see, and it's really cool and really empowering. She did a lot of murals on State Street after all the protests and stuff. A lot of that was hers, or art that she facilitated with students. And and she's now, like, her art is now adorning these beer cans, and it's really cool. It's a really cool story. So I would take a look at that as well. And then also one other thing I'll mention, it is Black Business Week in Beloit next week. Or City of Beloit officially declared a Black Business Week, and Rock County Jumpstart is hosting a Black Business Expo, which it's the first one, and the first one is going to be virtual. It's going to be basically every night next week from 5 to 7. If you go to the Rock County Jumpstart website, each business in the expo will have 15 minutes to kind of present their business and their products, and you can order and you just get to know all those Black-owned businesses in Rock County. It's a very cool thing, and we are the media sponsor of that, and we're proud to be. So the question is, and I'm curious if anybody knows about this. One more question here before I sign off. Does anybody know the wait for test results from the Public Testing and Alliant Energy Center? My understanding, and if anybody has recent experience, I haven't been tested there since June, so I don't know for sure, but what I'm hearing is it's still within 48 hours. That the priority is on calling anybody who tests positive. So if you're positive, you'll probably hear back within a day. And if you're negative, you'll get an email within 2 or 3 days. Last I heard, that was the case. If anybody has a different experience, please feel free to comment and correct me. Okay, last thing I'll say, I've gone on long enough today. Last thing I'll say is we are doing very well in our fundraising for our match campaign. As I mentioned, we got approved for Newsmatch, which is basically any donation between now and the end of the year is doubled by Newsmatch. Thank you, Jennifer. That's helpful. Jennifer says her experience 2 weeks ago, 48 hours, included an email from Exact Science and Public Health. Great. Thank you. So any donation between now and the end of the year is doubled by Newsmatch, which is funded by the Knight Foundation, Democracy Fund, Facebook Journalism Project, a couple others. We also found out we got approved for, we didn't even ask for this, they just gave it to us, the DEI Fund, which I think is also a Facebook thing. Is basically, if we get $7,000 in donations, they'll pitch in another $7,000. So up to $7,000, every donation you make is tripled. So you give us 10, we get 30. You give us 100, we get 300. Until up to $7,000. Now we're also doing very well already. Like I said, we're already past 5,500. So we need another about $1,500 to get to that $7,000 goal and trigger that $7,000 match. And then anything with the added bonus of anything that you put in there also gets matched again by Newsmatch. So, go to Madison365.org/donate, pitch us a few dollars, help us keep this free, help us keep this going, help us keep pushing for, accountability, help us keep pushing to keep you informed. It's really important that you all be informed, and it's important that we not charge money for it. So anything you can do to help us keep the lights on, keep paying the reporters, keep doing professional journalism, we really do appreciate it. Andrea asks, is Exact Science performing the test? Exact Science is processing the test. It's still county staff and I think some National Guard also who are actually doing the swabs, and then those go to various labs around the state, and Exact Science is one of those labs. So that's why you would have gotten it from Exact Science. So okay, that's all I have for you today. I appreciate your attention, and I appreciate you joining me and your time and your questions and your comments. I do appreciate it, really, I do. And I hope you have a wonderful evening. I will be back tomorrow, I hope, with more good news. I hope those numbers continue to go down. Until then, enjoy your evening.
This is 365 Media.